We know that the Colts have to do something at quarterback, but that's not just going to magically fix everything. What else do they need to address on the roster before the season starts? Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, party people? Thank you for joining in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am Jake Arthur, and he is Zach Hicks. You know the two of us from horseshoehuddle.com. Today, we're revisiting the Colts team needs ahead of the draft. These first couple waves of free agency have come and gone. The Colts were a little more active than we are used to that early. So it's time to revisit things and see what they still need to do. You know, quarterback, obviously, but what else do they need to fortify the roster leading into the season? Because obviously the draft, we know they're going to want to load up on picks. They always do. So what could they use those picks on? Last year, April, you think of it mostly in the draft, but last year they actually made several free agency moves, a couple meaningful ones, some of them not so much. They added Brandon King, Rodney McLeod, Brandon Kemp, and Stephon Gilmore all last April. So while we're looking ahead to the draft, don't just think free agency's over, because they probably will at least make a couple more moves in the next few weeks. So they have addressed a couple areas somewhat modestly so far. They've added Samson Abukum, Taven Bryan, Isaiah McKenzie, and Pharaoh Brown, which took care of a couple small needs. But what else? So Zach and I have been kind of pounding this drum, on Twitter and on here. Outside of quarterback, of course, cornerback. That's a very high need right now, because Stephon Gilmore and Brandon Faison are gone. Gilmore needed no introduction, obviously. Faison wasn't necessarily a fan favorite. But that's 1,500 snaps between the two of them that the Colts are going to have to look to replace. Zach Kenny Moore, the second, they've kind of committed to him for the year, it seems, on paper so far. But he's, in the nickel, he's the slot guy. He was banged up last year. He missed 5 games, and he just really didn't look like himself.
Yeah, I would say honestly right now, all you have are 2 roster locks at the position. You have Isaiah Rodgers, who is a nice young player, and I think he can be a cornerback 1, but he still hasn't really been that yet in the NFL. So that's a little bit concerning. And then Kenny Moore II, like you said, he was talked about in trade rumors, talked about potentially being on the move. He definitely felt like he was not going to be coming back at the end of last season. But that's all they really have in terms of roster locks at the position. I think Dallas Flowers is likely going to make the roster, especially with his special teams ability, but you can't really count on him to be a starter, an everyday player on defense. And then Tony Brown, obviously they brought back as well, but they brought him back to such a small deal that it's mostly like a special teams deal. And it's, more of a depth role type thing if he makes a team. So they need a lot of help. They just need more bodies at cornerback. They really don't have anybody there right now. It's just Kenny Moore II, Isaiah Rodgers Sr., which are the main guys. And then, Flowers and Tony Brown could be good special teamers, but ideally you don't just need to add someone through the draft or just someone in free agency. You need to add somebody in both. You need to grab someone like a Shaquille Griffin or a Rock Ya-Sin or someone like that through free agency, and then still maybe spend like a 2nd or a 3rd round pick on corner, because they need guys who can play on special teams. They need guys who can play on defense. They need guys who could start. It's not even that they have no talent in the cornerback room. It's they just don't have any bodies. They don't have any NFL capable bodies outside of 2 or 3 guys.
Yeah, and that's exactly why it is so important, because it's one thing if they were top heavy and they had 2 or 3 studs but no depth behind them and they just needed that. It's just question marks everywhere, because again, Kenny Moore, you like him, you hope he can bounce back, but that's far from a certainty. He's normally a 1,000 snap guy for you. Isaiah Rodgers, sure. But right now, like you mentioned, you're looking at Dallas Flowers and Tony Brown basically being your Isaiah Rodgers and Brandon Faison from last year. Right. So they got to do something. I think you mentioned really exactly the best 2 free agent fits for them, especially Shaquille Griffin, Rock Ya-Sin, obviously. Different system, but I think Rock would do fine here. They need to do that. And then you've actually talked about a lot of corners so far, whether it's your 30 days of Colts fits, your prospect interviews. Who are some cornerbacks in the draft that you think would fit the Colts really well?
Yeah, I think the Colts are definitely going to go, or they're going to definitely look at cornerback in round 2. You obviously can't say that they are 100% going to go that way because so many things change, and sometimes you have to go best player available. But I would say as of right now, if they stick at number 35, Kelly Ringo out of Georgia, the cornerback there, track star athlete, phenomenal straight line speed. I think he ran like a 4.36 at the NFL Combine. Did a lot of really good things for Georgia last season. Kind of a limited player. He's not really someone who can turn, can kind of, I want to say this in the nicest way. Like, he's kind of stiff. He's kind of a stiff athlete. He's not this type of guy who's super smooth and fluid. But if you get him in those cover 3 drops, you get him in press man where he can turn and run, and you give him some help over the middle to kind of help those in-breaking routes that he struggles with, I think it's a great fit. So I think Kelly Ringo is probably the best overall fit in this draft for the Colts. Julius Brents is an Indy native. Super quick feet, super smooth player, 6'3", 200 pounds, jumped like 41 inches at the combine, like super explosive. He's raw as heck. Like, he is super, super raw, but his potential is like top tier corner one day if he can ever get there. So that's another guy I like. And then just after that, Jacorian Bennett from Maryland is a superb athlete, really good player. Darius Rush is a former wide receiver turned corner out of South Carolina. He's a really good player as well. So the Colts have a lot of options that fit kind of their Build-A-Ballard type of mold there at cornerback. But, I still think they need more than just a draft corner. Even if they take 2 corners in this draft, they take one in round 2 or 3 and another one in 5 or 6. Like, I'm not going to look at this cornerback group after that and be like, yes, here we go. We are set. Like, I feel better about it, obviously, compared to what they have now, but there still needs to be a veteran in there. It doesn't even have to be a high-end veteran. It can be an Xavier Rhodes type of veteran from a couple years ago where it's a guy you're taking a shot on, or a TJ Carey type, even just a guy who's versatile and can play a lot of different positions for you. They just need more capable bodies out there at corner. And yeah, the draft has a lot of talent. I think Chris Ballard kind of does things this way on purpose. When he sees that there's a really strong position in the draft, he waits until after the draft to kind of address it if he hasn't in that draft, because he knows he's going to have a lot of depth there. So I do think corner will be addressed some way going forward, but they got to get something there. It is so bare. I know that's what I kind of keep saying here in this segment, but man, if you look at some of the names here outside of the top 2 guys, it's like, I don't want any of these guys playing on defense on Sundays.
Yeah, and as much as we've said, you need an alien at quarterback on your side, to win in the NFL. You also have to be able to defend those type of guys as well. So for my money, I think the Colts need to add at least 2 guys who are capable of starting. They don't necessarily have to be your new starters, but they have to be capable of contributing and pushing whoever ultimately does win the starting jobs. So yeah, we've seen Chris Ballard double dip, or he'll recognize a weakness and just throw a ton of resources at it. We've seen a couple different drafts where it feels like they've drafted 100 linebackers. This could be the cornerback draft for them. And real quick on Brents, I think he's going to be a guy that in these next few weeks, I think a lot of people watching, I think a lot of people around here in Indy will probably get, learn a little more about. Is a Tariq Woolen. If there's a Tariq Woolen in this year's class, is he it, or are they just different players?
Tariq Woolen is so different because Tariq Woolen was a 4.2 athlete at 6'4", 210 pounds.
Which is nuts.
With phenomenal agilities. It's just he didn't really know how to play corner. But he is one of the greatest athletes we've seen at the position. Where Julius Brents, super explosive, super quick feet, doesn't really have that kind of long speed at all. Tariq Woolen was a 4.2s, 4.3s guy. Julius Brents is like a mid 4.5s guy. He's kind of like your throwback, Brandon Browner type, that kind of guy who's going to beat you up at the line of scrimmage. He can tackle, a great run defender. He can even move with you laterally in those short areas, but you're going to need a kind of scheme that has a single high safety or has a safety over the top to kind of limit those long speed issues. And I think, with the Colts type of scheme, if you can get him into those cover 3 drops, if you can get him kind of retreating a little bit the line outside of his press, I think he can be fine here. But if you're putting him in a scheme that's going to put him on an island at least early on, like you're going to get some Rock Ya-Sin versus Denver moments back in 2019. But I do love Julius Brents. Like I have him higher than most people do in this class. I think the potential is there to be a really good corner. But in terms of the athletic ability, I don't see a Tariq Woolen. Tariq Woolen's just, it's still insane that he went as far back as he did last year.
An outlier, which is a bummer, of course, because he should have been a Colt, but that's for a different day.
Yes.
So cornerback, obviously big need. If the Colts go into the season with this current cornerback group, that is going to be madness. But Zach, do you know what else is madness? Built's March Madness bracket. That is what their March Madness bracket is back. We know all of you guys have a favorite bar, of course, either a bar or puff. I do, you do. And now it's your time to make it count. Go to builtmarchmadness.com to vote for your favorites. I'll be voting for the cookie dough puff. And if you don't vote for that one too, then the Colts won't be able to draft a quarterback. That just is what it is.
When you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. Not only that, but one Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your door. What makes Built bars and puffs so good? Well, for starters, they're all high in protein, low in sugar, and covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. Run to builtmarchmadness.com right now and vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March, so hop in and support your pick. I think it's still going in April. I hope it's still going in April, but yeah, go in there and support your pick. So, all right. So you and I actually went a little back and forth on this next topic of need that we're talking about here, Jake. And you definitely wanted to go with offensive line depth, which we'll talk about here in a second. But for me, I also wanted to go wide receiver. I think wide receiver is a big need. But let's talk some O-line depth. I think starter-wise, it's not atrocious.
Right.
I think you got to kind of count last year maybe as being a little bit of an anomaly. You know, the Matt Pryor incident was terrible early in the year, or not incident, but the Matt Pryor experiment was terrible. The Danny Pinter experiment was not good at right guard. Once Bernard Ryman got his feet under him late in the season, once Will Fries got his feet under him and they started playing well, the O-line was fine-ish. But it feels like as of right now, with the lack of depth, the lack of free agent signings so far at offensive line, they're kind of running it back with a group that was not good last year, which is a little bit concerning, especially when Chris Ballard came out after the end of the season and said, I failed the offensive line. I didn't do enough there, where it's I know there's plenty of time. They still have the draft, they still have free agency, but you still haven't done anything there at offensive line since then. So I don't know. I agree with you putting O-line depth on here, and just maybe even O-line starters. How good do you feel about Will Fries at right guard? I feel okay about it, but I don't feel great. There's so many questions right now with the offensive line, and the backup, the depth guys are not very good at all right now.
Right. Yeah. That's my notes here. I said, the starting five is fine. They grew a little bit last year. They got better, especially those two young guys. But where is the depth? Right now, Jordan Murray and Carter O'Donnell are your second team offensive tackles. And we know in the NFL, health is never guaranteed. The Colts offensive line has dealt with plenty of injuries in the past. When you look at the interior, it's not really any better. Danny Pinter is your only established interior depth. And sure, we don't maybe like that whole thing at right guard, but he's been really good as a backup center so far, so that's nice. But yeah, where is the depth? There are a couple guys there I think they like. They do like O'Donnell. They signed him to a contract extension. Wesley French kind of came along last summer. Dakota Shepley, I think, was someone who the Cowboys weren't thrilled to lose when the Colts signed him off of, I think, their practice squad. It was late in the year. So that's someone the Cowboys really liked before the Colts poached him. So sure, there's guys there they like, but they have to have a couple more established players. Maybe that comes in the form of a rookie in the first couple days that's capable of pushing Fries for his spot, or, I really want to see them grab a veteran who has started before and not just started a couple games. they need help. They need insurance in a big way.
Yeah, like a Dalton Reisner type guy who can come in and start from day one. That's one that makes sense. Connor McGovern is out there who's played center and guard. Not the Connor McGovern that signed with the Bills. There's another one. There's two Connor McGoverns that are interior offensive linemen.
Not confusing at all.
Yeah, no, not confusing. This one is still available. I promise. But he's still out there. You know, there's a couple guys out there, but man, for the most part, it's like just grab somebody. It's kind of like corner where it's like, look, I get it. You want to go into the draft and then kind of reevaluate after the draft, but like, yikes. Right now, looking at that depth chart is a little bit concerning, especially a depth offensive tackle as well. Like we saw how the offensive tackle stuff was going last year. Even like Dennis Kelly was okay-ish when he came in, but like bring some more bodies in, please. Bring some more bodies in. And I wanted to kind of switch gears a little bit to wide receiver though, where I think it's kind of in that same vein where like you feel okay about the starters. Like you feel okay about Alec Pierce. You feel okay about Michael Pittman Jr. You even feel okay-ish about Isaiah McKenzie. Like he's at least a guy who's done some good things from the slot in his NFL career. But after that, it's not really like anything. Like Ashton Doolin right now is your like by far and away your wide receiver 4. Like it's not even close between him and the guys behind him. Like he's already been handed the wide receiver 4 if you look at the depth chart right now. And I'm not saying Ashton Doolin's a bad player. Like he's a perfect wide receiver 5 or 6 to have who can come in as a wide receiver 4 if there's an injury in front of him. But he shouldn't be the non-contested wide receiver 4 on your roster. Obviously, again, I think they're going to add a wide receiver in the draft somewhere. But I think we're getting to the point with these team needs where we're looking at it and saying, okay, cornerback, they're going to add on day 2. Okay. Offensive line, they're going to add on day 2. Okay. Wide receiver, they're going to add on day 2. Eventually, you're going to run out of picks. Like, you don't have enough picks to address all these needs. They need to do a little bit more in free agency. They need to just kind of do that to kind of solidify the depth and not go into the draft with so many needs. But we'll see. I think kind of wide receiver and O-line are kind of in the same realm right now where it's like, yeah, the starters are passable. Like, we can get by with these starters. But, like, if one guy goes down, like, we're going to be killed next season.
Yeah, I feel the same way, just like you said, with the offensive line. I think they need to add a veteran who's been there and done that. It doesn't have to be an OBJ or a star or anything, just someone who knows how to get open in the NFL, basically. And then a receiver who's capable of contributing. I thought they needed someone who is capable of probably stretching the field at the beginning of free agency. And then they lost Paris Campbell and then replaced him with Isaiah McKenzie, which is fine. I think you and I both liked McKenzie. That's a nice move, but to me, that's not an equal replacement. Ashton Doolin, I do like that they re-signed him, but they're still missing guys. Mike Strawn, as much as I have wanted that to become a thing, it hasn't yet, and it may never. This is going to be year 3. So they need guys, and if the plan is to get a young quarterback, you have to surround him with weapons. And I do think that it's going to be supplemented a bit with the tight end group because I think they have big plans for those guys. It's a crazy athletic, young, really promising group. So I think that's going to factor into it as well. But like you literally do need bodies at the receiver position, guys who are more capable of, guys with a higher ceiling than what they've got right now.
Yeah, I will say I'm more inclined to get a veteran offensive lineman than get a veteran wide receiver. Like I'm okay with double dipping at wide receiver. You get your guy early on, get a guy in like round 2 or 3 to be your third wide receiver, be your kind of slot guy, be your deep threat, whatever role you want to get him in there for. And then maybe grab another one later to play some special teams and have some kind of developmental potential. I'd rather do that at wide receiver than double dip at offensive line in this draft. Like I'm cool with taking offensive linemen in this class, but like get a veteran, get some capable bodies in there, maybe take a guy with some upside in the draft. But just, it's an offensive line that kind of already has veterans, just get more veterans in there and just get more experience play. I think you can throw more young players at wide receiver than you can throw young players at offensive line and hope it works.
Yeah, we've seen that plan fail miserably before. So
yes,
totally agree. So next we're going to talk about the guys most reliant on that offensive line, which is the Colts' current quarterback group, because we haven't talked about it enough. All right. So obviously this is probably going to be a little more focused on what the Colts currently have rather than what they're going to get. So right now, this is a big need because right now your starters, Gardner Minshew, Sam Ehlinger is your backup, and then Nick Foles is in some weird sort of limbo. I mean, he still has some dead cap. There's still some possible cap savings there. I think 1.1 million is what they would get because it's a 1.5 dead cap. So still modest savings, but does he want to come back? Like, I was kind of surprised he's still there. So let's just take him off the table. And your quarterbacks right now are Gardner Minshew and Sam Ehlinger. So what does that leave you with? We've obviously talked about Minshew. You know, the plan is not for him to be the starter, but if disaster strikes, you know, he's capable. Very worse, you know, he's a good backup if you need him to start at the beginning of the season or whatever. It's fine. But right now, it looks, you know, as it is, your backup plan is your plan A. So that's one of the biggest indicators that we know quarterback is coming.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's trying to hide it. Like, a quarterback is absolutely coming to Indy. Gardner Minshew will be the backup, and whoever that quarterback is. Maybe he starts early in the year, like you said there, but yeah, Gardner Minshew is they're not going to go into next season with Gardner Minshew as the starter, like as the design starter, you know, like if maybe there's a young guy like an Anthony Richardson type that has to sit for a little bit to kind of learn the ropes. You throw Gardner Minshew out there to get burned early just so Richardson's not facing some tough defenses and stuff like that. That's kind of where it might be. But outside of that, Minshew's the backup. Ehlinger is competing for a roster spot, maybe a practice squad guy, maybe trade somewhere else. And like you said, Nick Foles is in some weird limbo where the Colts don't feel the need to cut him yet because it's not like he's going to sign anywhere. Like, he's going to sit as a free agent all season. Like, no one's going to sign him. We saw how his arm looked last year. It's not there anymore. So I guess they're waiting in limbo, and then they'll cut him when they absolutely have to make roster space or at the end of camp, or I don't know. I don't know what they're waiting for, but it's not a pressing matter because I don't think either side really cares right now to address that. But yeah, as of right now, Minshew and Ehlinger and definitely going to be backups next season.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Nick Foles' future is. If he wants to retire, maybe that's what they're doing. You know, there's no reason to rush anything. They're just everyone's coasting on vibes. Maybe that's the case.
Yeah.
But no, at some point that shoe is certainly going to drop. There's obviously more names floating out there until the Colts draft their guy or this player goes somewhere else. Lamar Jackson stuff will keep floating out there. I've seen stuff as recently as today. I think that's a no from us, dog. Bryce Young.
Look, personally, I'm for it. I'm all for Lamar Jackson.
Would do it if the Colts weren't in position to get someone at 4.
No, I do it regardless. I love Lamar Jackson. I would do it personally. It's just
not gonna.
It's not gonna It's not worth talking about because it's not gonna happen.
Right.
Like, I would love to discuss Lamar Jackson. You know how many film rooms I would love to throw on Lamar Jackson with Shane Steichen?
Oh, that'd be nuts.
It would be amazing. I'd have so much fun. It'd be my favorite offseason ever, but it's not going to happen. Like, it's not even worth discussing. Like,
right.
It's not happening. Colts are going to go with a young quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Other likely non-options, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, whichever order they go, whether it's 1 or 2, I don't really see either of them being there at 4. You know, Young's mentality and his ability to pick things up and just digest info quickly seems to be blowing people away. And then CJ Stroud is a bit of the complete package right now, as it seems. So I just don't think so. That may even represent in a team coming up to 3, which seems less likely than, you know, it seems like the Colts and Cardinals, like we talked about the other day. That seems like the most likely thing at 3. But you just never know. The draft is weird. Crazy things happen. And again, another one that's going to keep floating out there until it happens. I know this is your favorite bullet point. Hendon Hooker. Not out of the question, but very unlikely.
It's out of the question, Jake. It's out of the question.
I'm not saying for me, I don't think it's going to happen. But just like Lamar, it's going to keep getting brought up until the Colts draft their guy or he goes somewhere else.
Out of the question. It's just going to happen. It's out of the question. I can't wait until the 3rd or 4th pick on draft night, just so whoever the Colts take, it's not Hendon Hooker, and we can finally get past this. Like,
isn't that a bummer? It's a bummer when you like someone, but you have to like be so staunchly against them because of what they represent in a certain.
I know. Right. I like Hendon Hooker, man. It's just.
I do too. I have loved the 2 times I've been able to be around talking to him, and like I think he could be a really good player. I just don't like him for the Colts at 4 or as as they're playing at quarterback.
I hope he defies all expectations, everything with his negative profile, and he's just a phenomenal NFL player. But no, no, I'm out.
Yeah. So this all boils down to probably Anthony Richardson or Will Levis. I think if the Colts are able to lock something in to get that third pick, especially, it feels like it's Anthony Richardson. Will Levis, again, could be a nice player. If I trust him going anywhere with a coach, Shane Steichen is the marriage there. But the fallback plan, seemingly, because Anthony Richardson, that ceiling is just sky high. Like when I put myself in Chris Ballard's shoes, knowing what he likes to do, there's nothing about that pick that doesn't make every bit of sense.
Yeah. I do, again, ultimately think it's going to be Anthony Richardson. And I know we end up talking about this every single day on this show, so I know you guys are kind of tired of this. But yeah, again, at the end of the day, I think it's going to be Indy moving up to 3 for Anthony Richardson, and that's going to be their guy. But again, I like Will Levis. I think Will Levis can be a really good quarterback in the NFL. And if, somebody comes in and offers that Carolina Panthers offer to the Cardinals and the Colts don't want to match it, which, giving up 3 first-round picks when you wouldn't do that for number 1 to go up one spot
to move 3. Up once. Yeah.
Right. Like it's not going to happen. So if Indy gets beat that way, they're going to get beat. I think they'd be fine with Will Levis. Like I'd be fine with Will Levis there at 4. Like he's a good prospect. So yeah, I don't think there's really a lose situation here between those two guys. I'm happy with either guy. And I think at the end of the day, Indy's going to have their young quarterback of the future, and everything going forward after that is about what are the next steps to get this guy to that level, to that quarterback of the future, to that franchise quarterback, which that's going to be the real interesting stuff. Way more interesting than this speculative stuff about Hendon Hooker and Lamar Jackson and Richardson and Levis, whatever. What's going to be way more fun is actually talking about how this guy fits with the team and how they can get him to that next level. And I do believe it's going to be either Anthony Richardson or Will Levis. I just don't know which one right now. like anyone speculating, I have no clue which one, but I feel very, very, very confident it's going to be one of those guys, and I feel fairly confident it's Anthony Richardson.
I know you were just dying for the film room pieces post pick.
Yeah,
I'm excited. I'm excited for you.
Oh yeah.
So that is it for this episode of Quarterback Talk. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow. We're planning on being live again about 4:30. We're going to be with the host of the Locked On Florida Gators, Brandon Olson, one of the true stars of the Locked On Podcast Network. He's going to tell us all about Anthony Richardson, not from an outside eye like all of us have had. He's someone who has covered him day in and day out during his career there at Florida. So we'll be getting finally a little bit of a different perspective. It shouldn't just be the same thing that us and any of the other shows have been saying about Richardson. We'll get it from someone who's been there and watched him for quite a while.
Right. And just to add a correction there to what Jake said, it's actually going to be today. You guys are listening to this.
That's a good point.
Yeah, you guys are listening to this, I think, on Wednesday morning. It's going to be Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be talking with Brandon Olson. So that's going to be 2 shows in one day. And for tomorrow's show on Thursday, we'll probably do like me and Hag talking corners, just so we can do a little bit of break from the quarterback talk. I know it's all quarterback all the time on here. I'll grab Hag or I'll grab some draft guy and we'll talk some corners. And
now Hag talking quarterbacks is one thing, but him talking DBs, his home position, that'll be another.
I know we're going to have to really limit ourselves to like 2 guys we talk about so we can actually make it under the 30 minutes. But
right.
Yeah, we'll give a little break with the quarterbacks here. But yeah, 2 episodes today. So this one right now that you guys are listening to, and then 4:30 with Brandon Olson talking about Anthony Richardson. Make sure you guys are following along at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter. Also subscribe to Locked On Colts podcast on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And thank you for making Locked On Colts your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes. From free agency to the draft to salary cap management and more, join NFL experts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino as they take you through what it's like to build a successful NFL franchise every Monday through Friday. Find Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We will see you guys later today at 4:30 for a live stream. We'll see you guys later today.